Welcome to Poetry and Songwriting. I'm Barry Herold, and this is episode 6 of the Towers of the Sea series, The Room. It was just big enough to survive. The world outside was wild and chaotic. Constant war and political scandal. I could work at my desk by the window, overlooking the city. It was pretty at night. The searchlights danced atop the walls, like glowworms in a vast cavern. When I was young and naive, I laid many of the bricks of the walls that have become my prison. I believed I was free then, when my life had purpose. I never knew what lay on the other side. I imagined a great ocean, tamed by a peaceful bay, and if I saved up enough credits I could fish away the last useful days of my life. Free from that room. That reminder of what once was, what is, and what will never be. I decided to make this a different character with a different accent. It's kind of almost Northern Irish, almost Scottish, kind of in there. But he's kind of an older character who's been through the society as far as he could get and saved up enough credits to move to the next level so he could have some semblance of freedom, but realised there is really no freedom, it's just a bigger prison. And this kind of has come from a response to like the 15-minute cities that are starting to pop up, this kind of idea that you'll have everything within 15 minutes and you won't have to leave, and if you do leave, we'll fine you. And I think it's an interesting concept of the government being a boot stamping on a head for eternity. And it's not a good idea, because revolutions happen that way. The more that you push down on a society, the more likely it'll spring back and explode in your face. And I think that's the kind of thing that a lot of the people in power at the moment don't realize, is that the best way to lead is from the bottom up, and to give people the opportunities to develop their own 15-minute cities, and to not create prisons where you have to regulate people. And it does give me a little bit of hope that I don't think anybody has the real capabilities of actually implementing a lot of the things that the World Economic Forum want. They want to create this digital system and stuff, and digital currency and everything monitored by the government, but is anybody really going to do that? I mean, maybe if there's AI, but is anybody really honestly actually going to monitor all of that sort of stuff? I mean, you see the response to the pandemic and how things changed almost weekly. There was no real plan. Everything was just random. And it does make me think a lot about my life in general, and feeling like the other part of this poem is the social isolation that happens as you get older. More and more of your friends move on to other things, and you become trapped within your own prison that you've created. And I think I've definitely done that with a lot of different projects that I've been involved in. I've tried to do upcycling, and then somebody else got excited and wanted to be involved, and then it became their project, and I just gave up, because it's like I can't be bothered, because I can't do anything. And I've had that with acting, with people like wanting to do short films, wanting to get out there, and it just never happens. And then that becomes like a wall. This is this barrier that I put up and say, this, I can't obviously do it myself, because I've had all these issues before where people say they're going to do things and it never happens, so I'm just not even going to bother doing it. So I think it is a vicious cycle of tying myself up in knots and putting up barriers and saying I can't do things. And it's so frustrating when I suddenly realize that I actually can do something. Like a podcasting is actually an easy thing that I can actually do, and try to create my own sort of boundaries around that aren't someone else's boundaries. It is an interesting thing to grapple with being socially isolated from things outside of my control, but also isolated by things within my control. So I think that's what this part of the story is about. A character within myself who is constantly self-sabotaging and doesn't realize their own limitations and their own freedoms. And I think there is always hope, because I don't think anybody knows anything. And I think I'll always come to the conclusion almost every episode that nobody knows anything about anything, and everything is just random. I don't think there's a plan, and I think we have to make our own plan and our own way forward. I think, like Jim Carrey has said, I'd rather fail at doing something that I want to do than fail at doing something that I never wanted to do anyway. And a book that I actually read recently over the break was called Steal Like an Artist, and realizing that being an artist or being creative is kind of, I mean, you don't steal things, but you emulate and you copy until you do it in your own way, and remixing and reimagining things, because everything has already been done. It's already, Shakespeare did it, and then all the Greek playwrights did it before him. Nothing is new, it's all redone, but we all have to try to find a way to redo it in a way that's unique and different, but also the same, and acknowledging that, you can't really change the past, and you can't really change the future, but you can change now. So I think that's the message for this segment of the podcast. Good to be back in for another season. I'm going to try to do this a bit more regularly. I get sort of discouraged and every so often, so I'm going to try and pull these out a little bit more regularly. So I'll see you next time on Poetry and Songwriting, wherever you get your podcasts.